girls, this is your Geometry Lesson 3 video. Today we're going to be working on finding missing angles using algebra. Yesterday we talked during our live class about what supplementary, complementary, and vertical angles are. And today we're going to use that same information, but we're also going to use some algebra to find missing angles. So just a couple of reminders from what we talked about yesterday. The first thing would be that two angles are complementary if the sum of their measures is 90 degrees. So remember that was yesterday when we took 90 minus the angle that we knew, and we were able to find the missing angle based on the fact that complementary means they add up to 90. Then we said two angles are supplementary if the sum of their measures was 180 degrees. So that was where we took 180 and we subtracted the angle that we knew, and what we got as our answer became the missing angle. So then we also talked about vertical angles, and if you remember, those are the angles that are across from each other and they form V's. So either these two or these two, where they are across from each other, that those are vertical angles, and we know that they equal each other. So we're going to kind of take what we know from yesterday and add to it to find some missing angles. In example 1, it says find the value of x. So notice they're not asking you what the angle equals. If they were asking us that, we could just do what we did yesterday and do 180 minus 35. This time they're asking us to find the value of x. So since the two angles form a straight line, remember we know that they are supplementary. And supplementary means that when you add the two angles together, it equals 180 degrees. That's going to be helpful information for us as we write our equation. So we're going to take that angle of 5x and we're going to add it to 35. And because we know they're supplementary, the answer to our equation is going to be 180 degrees. Now we can solve for x to figure out the answer for this problem. So split your equation down the middle. We're going to subtract 35 from both sides. And we get 5x on this side, and 180 minus 35 gives us 145. Divide by 5 on both sides to get x by itself, and we get x equals 29. So notice this is different from what we did yesterday, where we just took 180 minus 35 to find that missing angle. We can use what we learned yesterday, though, to check our answer. So we know that the whole thing together equals 180. So we can subtract the angle that they gave us, which is 35. And when we do that in our calculator, we get 145. Now, because we have 5x, we should take that 145 and divide it by 5, and that gives us 29, which is our answer. So we know that we solved this one correctly. In example 2, we also need to find the value of x, but notice this picture looks a little bit different. It says since the two angles form a right angle, remember we see that box in the corner, we know that they are complementary. Remember that complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. So we are going to set up an equation similar to what we did before to find x. So we're going to say 2x plus 22. But this time, instead of our equation equaling 180 degrees, because these two angles are complementary, we know that when you add them up, they equal 90 degrees. So we're going to say in our equation, 2x plus 22 equals 90. So we're going to solve this equation for x one more time by subtracting 22 from both sides. That leaves us with 2x on this side, and 90 minus 22 is 68. To get x by itself, we divide by 2 on both sides. And we get x equals 34.
Mrs. Bovenizer, can you scroll? Because I don't have it. There we go. My screen keeps popping up. Thank you. Now, Mrs. Bovenizer, is 34 the angle? Like I can put 22 for the one and 34 for the other? That's the angle measure that we just found?
Well, if we did 22 plus 34, we can see if that would give us 90 degrees. So 6 and 5. Nope. So 34 is not the measure of the angle. 34 is just x. But we know that they gave us 2x. So we could take 2 times our x, which is 34. And that will be the measure of our angle. So 34 times 2 is 68. So that would be, if we know that, if we tried that and we did 22 plus 68, that's your 90 degrees. So 34 is not the measure of the angle, 34 is x, but then you can plug that 34 in for x into the expression for the angle 2x. Does that help?
That does. So like 68's not the answer to the problem. 34 is the answer to the problem, right? And 68, if they asked us for the angle measurement, that's what we'd go and do to find the other one. So we kind of just found 68 to check our answer, right?
Yep.
Okay.
In example 3, once again, we have to find the value of x, but when we look at this picture, now we're looking at different types of angles. So if we think about what those angles are when they're across from each other, you should remember that those V's mean that this is vertical angles. So in example 3, it says since they are across from each other, they're vertical, and we know vertical angles equal each other. So again, that's going to help us to write our equation, because if they're equal to each other, then we can take this angle, which is 6x, and make it equal to the other angle, which is 36. And that allows us to solve for x. If they wanted to know the value of the angle, we wouldn't even have to do any math, because we could just look at the two angles and know that they equal each other. So we would just know that our answer would be 36 for that angle. But that's not what they're asking for. They're asking for us to find x. So this is just a one-step equation. All we do is split it down the middle. We're going to divide by 6 on both sides. And that will tell us what x equals. So 36 divided by 6 is just 6. So there's a difference between what we did yesterday, where we found the missing angle, and what we're doing today, where we're using those relationships to help us solve for x, and then we're using what we learned yesterday to check our answer. So in example 3, we know because these two angles equal each other, we know that 6x should equal 36, because opposite angles are equal to each other. So if we did 6x to check our answer, and we plugged in 6 for x that we got down here, we get 36. So we know that we solved for x correctly, because we should have gotten 36 when we plugged in 6 into that expression. Does that make sense, Mrs. Piacenti?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. So, go ahead.
So now we just have a couple of problems here that we want you guys to try. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mrs. Piacenti.
Okay. So while Mrs. Bovenizer is doing that, make sure you guys pause your video and you're not peeking as we go, because I'm going to stop talking for 2 seconds and then I'm going to start going into the problem. So make sure that you guys pause the video and you're ready to go when you press play. So go ahead, Mrs. Bovenizer. You can switch it over.
Okay.
And then I'm going to present my screen. Your entire window. Just like class, guys. Look at our fanciness. Okay, so, oops, I have that line on there still. Well, that doesn't matter.
That's okay.
All right, so I'm going to scroll down. So right now I'm going to say pause your video. So pause, and when you're ready, press play. Okay, so we see for A that it is a right angle. So it has that little box. So we know that 43 and x minus 7 both added together have to equal 90. So we're going to put 43 plus x minus 7 equal to 90. I'm going to combine my 43 and my minus 7. So 43, let me get my calculator, minus 7 gives me 36. So x is over on here. Whoops. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I have 36 plus my x equals 90. I have to get rid of this 36, so it's a positive 36, so subtract 36 from both sides. And 90 minus 36 gives me 54. So x equals 54. Now, like we said again, it's not the actual angle measure, but we can check that. If I do 54 minus 7, I get 47 for this angle. 47 plus 43, yep, equals 90. So we did this one right. But again, the answer is x equals 54, not that 47. Okay, so for B, we see these form those V's. So these are vertical angles, so they get equal to each other. So 3x equals 132. Draw my line. There's no combining for this one, so I'm just going to, this is multiplying, so I'm going to divide both sides by 3. X equals 132 divided by 3 gives me 44. So x equals 44. Again, that angle measurement is not 44. X is just 44. So let's see what 44 times 3 is. Hopefully it's 132. And yes, it is. So we are right on this one. Our last one is a straight angle. What should those add up to for supplementary? They should add up to 180. So if I have 110 plus 7x equals 180, draw my line. I can't combine the 7x and the 110, so I'm going to subtract 110 from both sides. I get 7x equals 180 minus 110 gives me 70. Divide both sides by 7, so x equals 10. So my answer is 10, but let's just check. 7 times my x, which is 10, is 70. 70 plus 110, yep, 180. So we are all correct. Mrs. Bovenizer, anything you want to add that we need to put in there, do you think?
I think just, the big idea that needing to know the relationships with the angles really kind of is super important to help you write the correct equation to find x. So if we're looking at complementary angles, we're going to set up an equation that equals 90 degrees. If we're looking at vertical angles, then our two things that they label, we set up our equations so that they're equal to each other. But if we're looking at supplementary angles, then we're going to set up an equation where we add up the things that they give us, and our equation will equal 180. So that's really the biggest thing between connecting what we did yesterday and what we did today.
So I'm just going to write add to 180, add to 90. In vertical, you put equal to each other. Does that kind of sum it up, Mrs. Bovenizer?
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
All right, guys, so that is it for our notes. You have task cards that you're going to need to do and check your answers with that. I believe you only have to do a couple task cards, so please look at the calendar to see what you actually have to do. If that's it, we will see you guys on Monday then. See you later. Bye.
Bye, guys.